Thank you, everybody, for joining. If you haven't met me before, my name is Jose Najera. I am the SHRM Student Chapter President. Today, I'm joined by our faculty advisor, Dr. Lisa Persecki, also joined by my Vice President, Annika Bennett. I have a few members of the Student Chapter here. I have Curtis Cooper joining in, and of course, Dr. Shuck, the HROD Program Manager at the University of Louisville. So it's a great honor to have him here speaking with us today. So today we're going to talk about employee engagement, and some of the things to consider is that a survey done at an organization about 10 years ago discovered that 70% of that organization was not fully engaged. So that's a large number. You could just imagine the effects of that on the bottom line. So think about it now in recent events that happened, such as COVID, civil unrest, incidents at the White House, and everything else that has gone on. You could just imagine working from home, how is this going to eventually turn out employee engagement once we eventually go back to what normal was before? So I think it's a great topic, and I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Shuck.
Oh, goodness. I'm honored. Listen, I'm going to continue to admit folks as they come in. We're just going to welcome. We're just going to fold folks into the mix here. Jose, thank you, man. I appreciate you asking me to be here and to talk about this idea of employee engagement. It's a nebulous topic right now. It really is. And you mentioned some of the reasons why. COVID, like, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to my house, right? Like, who would have thought we would be like virtually Skyping stuff in? And I don't know about you, but I've got Google Meetups and Zoom and Collaborate and FaceTime. And I mean, there's just all these different ways that we are connecting across organizations. And so right now, everybody's talking about engagement. Everybody's talking about culture. How do we drive engagement? Before we get started, here's what I'm telling organizations that I get a chance to work with. Engagement may not be a fair ask right now, but well-being and health is. And so if organizations are focusing on engagement at this time, which means how productive are people being, how are they connecting to the organization, how fast are they working, we may be asking the wrong questions here. Instead, I think what we might want to be asking is, are people doing okay? You guys okay? Like, how are you healthy? Is your family healthy? Are you navigating this all right? Because I didn't for a long time. It was very difficult for me. I have a wife. I've been married for 20 years, and I have a 10-year-old little girl. And it was March the 11th. Everything kind of pivoted. The university shut down. I was actually on a trip back from LA doing some work with a company out there called Toyota. And I got a note like, all right, well, I'm not going back to the university. I don't even know where my office key is. I had to cancel my parking spot on the university. And they were like, well, just send in your parking tag. And I'm like, dude, I don't know where my tag is, man. Did you send a new tag? Because I don't know that I have a new tag. And so they had pity on me. And I played like the absent-minded professor. Lots of things have changed. Okay. And so as we think about this idea of employee engagement, I want us to have that in a context, like a COVID context. I wanted to have it in a social justice context. I want to have that conversation in a well-being context, because that's where the construct really comes alive. Now, I've been doing research on employee engagement for the past 15 years. I did my doctoral work down at a little school then called Florida International University, which is now the second largest Hispanic serving institution in the country. I lived in Miami for 6 years. While I was going to school, I worked for a very small company there called Norwegian Cruise Line. And that was fun. I did corporate HR stuff, and I did employee engagement stuff. And I was really interested in, what does it mean to be engaged? Like, what are we asking our crew members to do? And I was corporate shoreside. So we have big, beautiful ships. When I worked for the company, we had 12 amazingly large, humongous floating cities that would be out someplace in the Mediterranean or the Mexican Riviera or the Caribbean. I had a cube, and I was in a big, tall office building that was right beside the Miami International Airport. So we got to watch all the planes land every day. But we were really asking, like, okay, what are we asking folks to do? We say we need more engagement. What does that look like? What does that feel like? What does that mean? How do we measure that? And those are questions that really drove my curiosity around this idea of engagement. So I'm curious. I'm going to tee up some slides really quickly. This is going to be a loose conversation. I just really want to have a discussion. but I want to present you some research because here's what I find. When I go to keynotes or talks and people are like, oh, let's talk about employee engagement, very little of that is evidence-based. Very little of that is research-based. The statistic that Jose cited, 70%, comes from Gallup. Gallup did the early research on employee engagement, and that statistic is actually in the Journal of Applied Psychology, which is kind of the number one journal. And if you get a journal article in the Journal of Applied Psychology, you like get an automatic promotion and a pay raise. Like it's that kind of a prestigious thing. But that's right. Yeah, Jose is exactly right. Less than 70% of the American workforce is engaged. Now, here's the amazing thing about that statistic. That statistic that Jose is talking about originated in 1999. 1999. So we've had 1999, we've had 2009, and we've had 2019 plus 2 years. So we've had 2 decades of work around employee engagement. And guess what? Jose's statistic is accurate today, just as accurate today as it was 2 decades ago. That's a problem. This is a $2 billion industry. $2 billion industry. People make $2 billion a year off of like helping people drive employee engagement. And we still haven't moved the needle 1 percentage point. So there could be some reasons for that. I want to talk through some of that a little bit with you today. I'm going to tee up some slides really quickly. While I'm doing that, here's my ask. In the chat box, if you don't mind, what questions do you have? When you think about employee engagement, why did you come? What is there something that you really want to get out of today's session? Is there something you really want to know? And I'm going to try to hit on that today. Okay. Tee up these slides. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. All right, let me make sure. Can you guys all see? Can you see the whole slide? Thumbs up if you can see the whole slide. Bam, that's what I'm talking about. Okay. All right, let me pull up some chat action here. Okay. Bam, I love it. It's working. Okay. This is a hard question. I wonder if there are any differences in engagement by industry. Any data on that? Okay, we can talk about that. I love it. Any other questions anybody's got? If you do, drop them right here. So this is my question. Where does it come from and who cares, right? I mean, at the end of the day, does it impact the performance at all? And if so, how? Is there any evidence around that? What can be done to convert engagement into job satisfaction? Oh, Jennifer, that's a great question. I'm gonna speak to that. Curious about your general thoughts on why the stat hasn't changed despite discrete. Yeah, I've got Eric. Great question. I can definitely tag into that. What are the biggest challenges? Common trends? It seems trendy. Oh, it's trendy, particularly with diversity, equity, inclusion. Yes, absolutely. I have some thoughts on that, Wesley, for sure. Yep. Manufacturers driving engagement different with physical labor industry. Curtis, it's great. Curtis, let me ask you a question about that. Would you consider the employees at your company to be desk workers or non-desk workers? Are they out in the field doing their thing all day, or are they like me and I sit at a computer for like 10 hours a day?
Oh no, they're definitely in the plant.
Okay, perfect. So yeah. They're working with their hands, they're physically moving, it's physical labor, right?
Yeah, and which drives up the turnover rate naturally.
Yeah, totally. Absolutely. Okay. Well, we can totally dig into some of these questions. These are really, really good. My contact information is on the bottom. I have a ridiculous YouTube channel that has me and my daughter being a dad, doing dumb stuff like riding 4-wheelers around, but also have some things around organizational behavior, leadership. If you want more information, you can catch me on the socials. This is also my Clubhouse handle if you're on Clubhouse. If you need an invite to Clubhouse, let me know. I'll send you an invite to Clubhouse. Okay, let's get started. Let me tell you a little bit about who I am really quickly, because I think it's important to like humanize faculty, because sometimes I think we don't get to interact a lot. So how would you know like what I like to do? So these are some pictures from my life. I bring my wife a latte art latte every morning. I love to do that for her. So this is an actual picture from my house. I have a big green egg. I told Jose I've just pulled a brisket off my big green egg for my family. When they get home, they're going to be very happy about that. I work out 4 times a week, and here's why. That is my time to pay myself. And so I go to the gym um, 4 times a week for 90 minutes, and I carve out that time. If you are not self-caring during COVID, during all of this junk that's going on, you need to be doing that. And so I'm going to encourage you to pay yourself up first. I do presentations all over the world. I work with a company called BI Worldwide out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. I've done work. I'll show you on the next slide here. Here's me. The middle picture is me at HP server farm. It's a lot of servers at HP. I was surprised. And I had to get through some security clearances to get there. And I was surprised they let me take this picture. I've done some work recently at Western Union and DaVita out in Denver. The bottom picture on the right-hand side is the Dallas Cowboys training facility, which is pretty cool. I hold 4 U.S. copyrights with another one pending, and work with companies here in town to develop intellectual property and leverage and commercialize that intellectual property around employee engagement. So that's fun stuff. 2 of my favorite pictures. I did some work with the Frisco Fire Department down in Frisco, Texas, at Fire Station number 4. They suited me up in fire gear. Ladies and gentlemen, that is heavy stuff. I do not know how women and men climb up ladders in full fire gear, because they had me go up and down stairs one time and I was winded like a crazy man. And then I recently gave a keynote in Shanghai, China, which was cool, back before COVID, and did some work in South Korea and have been all over northern and southern India. I tell you all this because the work that we do, the work that we're doing in the HROD program that you're learning and that you're going to go out and do will give you reach out into the world like you would never have imagined. I grew up off the backside of Churchill Downs on a little street called Southern Parkway. My grandfather was the back guard security gate for the backside of the track. I was a really bad high school student. No one expected me to go to college, and it didn't look very good for me. I want you to know that when you find your passion and when you dig into something that you really love, and for me, it's people, it's workplace and how we create experiences of work that help people live better lives, not just go to work. The world just kind of opens up to you. I've oftentimes pinched myself and been like, are you sure you got the right guy? Like, you want me to do what? Huh? And then I jump on it and say yes before they say no, and they figure out they made a mistake. And I get on the airplane really quickly. But it's been a really, really fun ride. And I think it's important that the work that we are doing in our program in OLL and HROD is global work. It's not something that a couple of white papers here and there or a couple of little trade articles. It's real world research. And so I would encourage you to get to know your faculty, get to know their research lines, get to know what really, really, what they're passionate about, because they're doing the same things. Trust me, they're doing the exact same things. So I just wanted to share a little bit about me and kind of what I do. All right, audience participation time. So here's my question for you. When we say employee engagement, what are we actually talking about? So what comes to mind for you when someone says employee engagement? What does it mean to be engaged? You can drop anything into the chat box, or if you want to talk, feel free to unmute yourself. Absorption of task. I like that, John. Good. When they want to do their best work. Yes. Okay. Internalizing, commitment to the mission, motivation, belief. Okay. Yeah. Good. Yeah, awesome.
Yeah. I was going to add, first is they're actually doing their job, but beyond just doing your job, you're trying to either make your team, department, organization as a whole, depending on size of place you work, better and improve it overall. So that's how I would define engagement.
I love it. That's terrific. So first it's like, do you even do like the minimum stuff? And then do we go above and beyond that? Okay. Dig it. Others? Anybody else? I see inspired, actively involved, immersed in culture, belief. Love that word belief there. Belief is an emotional word, right? When we believe something, we move toward it. I'm reminded of a time I took my daughter to Disney World, and we were waiting in line to meet Princess Anna, and she believed that she was an Arendelle. If you have kids, the Frozen thing, and she believed that she was an Arendelle, and because she believed that, her actions then followed her beliefs. And sometimes, most of the time, actually, the research would suggest that many times our behaviors are grounded in how we feel about something, not just how we think about something. And that's one of the foundational principles of something that we might call behavioral economics. How we get people to feel and nudge versus rationalizing through what we mean. Okay, well, these are great. These are terrific words. Organization turns their jobs into a career. Oh, I love that, Wesley. I know a lot of people who don't get to have conversations with their supervisors about their careers, and that's a real tool to move things forward for sure. All right, well, let's jump forward here a little bit. For me, engagement looks a little bit like this. Everybody wants more of it, but they're not sure what it is. I've been in companies before and they're like, we want more engagement. We need people to be more, we need engagement here now. And I'm like, okay, well, what does that mean? They're like, I don't know. We just need more of it. And I feel like engagement is like the cheeseburger of organization development. Everybody wants a little bit more. I'll take another bite. Everybody's kind of chasing after it. How do I get to it? What do I do? What's the evidence around it? What's the research? I don't really know. And so it's this kind of nebulous concept that can be at times very difficult to define. So let me tell you a little bit about kind of our research and kind of tee that up a little bit. For the past 15 years, this is when our big question has come from. Where does engagement come from, and what is it? So if it's so important and it drives almost every important organizational outcome we can throw at it, creativity, innovation, turnover, health, well-being, catecholamine levels, stress, burnout, exhaustion, vigor, satisfaction, we can go on and on and on and on, then what is it? Somebody tell me what it is, and for crying out loud, where does it come from? So this has been our question, and we've been on a quest to get to this question for a long time. Let me give you a very specific definition of employee engagement. So here's how we got here. We read everything on employee engagement over the past 3 decades, and we collapsed those into a singular definition. Now, in 2010, when I was doing my work at FIU, there wasn't really a definition of employee engagement. So we wrote an article that appeared in a journal, and we defined what we thought at that point was employee engagement. This is our updated definition. So when we talk about measurement later on, you're going to see this come back up. Engagement is the maintenance. It has 3 things. It is the maintenance, it is the intensity, and it is the direction of effort and energy that we give to something. Now, if you take the word employee off there and we just say engagement is the maintenance, intensity, and direction of effort and energy that we give to something. Look, when I'm engaged as a father, I give my family intensity, I give them effort, I give them energy, and the levels of that are how much energy am I giving to my family? What's the intensity level? Am I sold out to them, or am I kind of push back? And what's the direction of that? See, engagement has to have a target. The principles of engagement, whether that's employee engagement, community engagement, sport engagement, whatever we want to call it, the principles of that don't change. The practice of it does. And so when we say, how engaged are people with their community? What I think we're really talking about is, do they give their community effort and energy? Do they care? Do they show up at meetings? How engaged are our students in our program? Do they come to class? Do they do the assignments? Do they read the books? Do they give the program? Do they give the class? Do they give the assignment effort and energy? And if they do, at what level do they maintain that energy? What's the intensity? And then where's the direction, right? Which way is it going? And so when we think about this idea of employee engagement, this is kind of how we define it. Now, I'm going to add one statistic. Well, any questions about this before we press forward? Any questions? Thoughts? If we were in an organization today and we said, how do you guys define engagement? They would have a different definition. That's okay. That's all right. You don't have to use our definition. You don't have to use my definition, but you need to have one. When I worked
Is this part of the reason why you think the statistic hasn't changed over time is because it was poorly defined or a definition was non-existent?
Yeah. So with Gallup in particular, I have some philosophical issues with the way that Gallup has defined and then commercialized engagement. See, Gallup offers two things, and you, as an HR practitioner, I think you need to be careful about this. You need to be wary of people that sell the problem and the solution. Okay, so they sell the problem. Man, 70% of the people at this organization are disengaged. Golly. But you know what drives that? A management program. And guess what Gallup's got? A really great management program, right? And so they can sell both sides of the coin. I think it's not moved yet because it's not been properly defined and it's not been properly measured. Gallup's Q12, and I'm friends with Jim Harder, who's the chief scientist at Gallup, as well as Marcus Buckingham and a guy by the name of Rod Wagner, who wrote the book First Break All the Rules. Jim Harder and Rod Wagner wrote that very first book that introduced and commercialized the idea of employee engagement. They developed this measure called the Q12. And the Q12 really measures conditions of engagement rather than the state of engagement. And it asks extreme questions, which is fine, but they ask questions like, do you have a best friend at work, right? And if you don't have a best friend at work, then it's likely to you to be disengaged, depending on how you answer on those 12 questions. So I think part of the problem is a measurement issue. Part of the problem is we haven't had a unified definition. Yeah, I think that's a really good statement. Oh yeah. I'm looking at what Wesley's saying. It takes too much energy and focus. The companies only focus on when they have to. Sometimes, yeah. I think sometimes it's the wrong output. Like engagement isn't the output. It's the throughput. The outputs are things like turnover. The outputs are things like health and well-being. Engagement is a state. It's a place where our mind and our hearts live. Take me, for example, or take Lisa, for example. Are we proud to work at the University of Louisville? What's that pride look like? Are we, when we work, are we really distracted, or are we concentrated? Are we able to really kind of focus and dig in on our work, carve out that time? And so when people say we just need engagement as an output, I don't think engagement is an output. I think it's a throughput. I think it's something that it's a state we get to, and then there are things that come from that for sure. So let me add one additional statistic to culture. Yeah, for sure, culture. See, a company can't mandate engagement. So it's a good question, Wesley. A company can't make people be engaged. Like we can't write a policy manual. It's like, look, your engagement has to be here. My buddy Rod Wagner, who I talked about earlier, his slogan was, if you get a company survey, you just mark 5 to survive. Just mark 5 to survive, baby. Because we're just trying to survive. I'm just trying to get my pay raise, right? I'm just get my pay raise here. That's not engagement. That's different. The conditions of work, how people experience work, is what drives this thing called engagement. So how do I feel? Do I belong? Do I feel connected to a part of a community? I do not have my U of L swag on, but I love that some people have U of L swag on. Yep, right there. Boom. I see it. Yep. I love that Jose's got U of L behind him right there. Those are the kinds of things that say, I belong here. I wear our logo. I wear our gear. I'm proud to be here. Right. When I feel connected to a part of a community, which has been very difficult during COVID. It has been so hard to connect on a personal level with folks if you didn't have already established relationships. It has been hard to do that. Connection is key, and community is the currency of engagement for sure. If engagement is the outcome, community is what we buy it with for sure. Yeah. All right. Here's the challenge. The number of employees engaged after 6 months on the job is around 40%. So there's a 60% drop off from somebody's first day on the job to their 6 month mark. That's pretty like steep drop off, don't you think? Like 60% is pretty critical. And so there's a real opportunity here to nudge the needle. There's a lot of consulting companies that have, when I say commercialized, they put a dollar amount to it. So there's a lot to be gained here. Sometimes people say, well, do you care about engagement because it drives performance or productivity? And the answer to that question for me is no, I don't care. I don't care if companies are profitable. I understand that they need to be, but it isn't something that I care about. Here's what I care about. The research that we've done at the university says that when people work in places where they can experience high levels of engagement, those people fundamentally live a different life. And I only need to ask you about a time when you hated your job and work sucked and it wasn't fun. And on Sunday nights, you would get a little pit in your stomach and you would be sad that on Monday morning, you had to go into this place that was going to literally suck the life out of you for the next 5 days. And you looked forward until Friday. And so I care that people can live different lives through their work, not just go to work. And so this number to me is impressionable because it tells me that only 40% of an average workforce would be able to say, man, I just really feel like I love it here. Like I belong, I'm a part of. And so as HRD practitioners, as human resource professionals, we have an opportunity to really nudge this number. And if this is true, if this is accurate, that 40% is the number, then what would our organizations even look like if it was at 50% or let's get crazy and say 70%, right? Like it would look and feel a lot different. And I suspect things like diversity, equity, and inclusion would also look a lot different and feel a lot different. I did some work up in Philadelphia, and I was talking with a group of professionals who do DEI work for a large company, and they were telling me about all the great things they were doing, and all the things they were doing to drive engagement, and here's kind of where we arrived. That they had a lot of employee perks. They had gyms, they had memberships, they had free coffee, they had donuts on Friday, they had all these kind of cool things, free food in the cafeteria. But none of those things matter if people don't feel like they belong. They just don't. If there's a group of employees, if there is a minority group of employees who don't feel like their voice is heard, they don't feel like they're invited to the table, and it's different than being in the room than being at the table. Those are two very different things. And when we invite people to the table, we empower their voice. And I'll talk about why that's important a little bit later on. But nobody cares about free coffee in the break room if I don't feel like I can belong here. I don't fit here. And so I think that could be a part of this number. And why it could be where it's at, because people we get into a place and we're like, oh, maybe I don't fit here. And there's a natural ebb and flow to engagement as well, for sure. All right. You asked me why I thought that number's not changed. Here's why I think that number's not changed. There's something that I call, or that we might call, objectification of the practice. Okay. Does anybody want to take a wild guess at what is when we objectify something, what does that mean? What does it mean to objectify something? I get it. So when we objectify something, we remove the human element. It becomes a thing. Yeah. Talk to the hand, we degrade, a means to an end. Perfect. Yeah, these are great, right? When we remove the human element, then it becomes a means to an end. It becomes a thing we do, not something that we live into. All right. Yeah, that's exactly right. We view it without emotions. We view it without motivations. We view it without drive. So, I told you I have a friend. His name is Rod Wagner. He wrote a book. There it is. There's the book. You can get it on Amazon, or better yet, get it used on eBay or something like that. Rod wrote this book called Widgets, and Widgets was this terrific research evidence-based book. He sent me a copy of it right here. Here's my copy of it. So I went to the bookstore and I was looking for his book, because when your friend writes a book, you go to the bookstore and you're like, hey, I want to find a book, and you take a selfie with the book. So this is me at the Barnes & Noble over in the Paddock Shops here in Louisville. And I took this selfie, and literally right next to Rod's book was this other book on the right-hand side of your screen called Employee Engagement for Dummies. Now, I've never had a chance to meet Bob Kohler. I'd love to meet him sometime. I think he was really well-intentioned when he wrote this book. But inside this book is a list of top 10 things. Like, well, if you have Taco Tuesdays and Pizza Fridays and Sweatpant Mondays, then everybody will be engaged. I don't think that's true. I don't think it's that easy. I don't think that's what it's about. There's another example of objectifying the practice. There's a guy by the name of Kevin Sheridan. And this is an AT. This came from the Association for Talent Development. This was a webcast series that he put together. And this is his quote: actively disengaged employees are also known as vampires because they suck the lifeblood out of their managers and the organization. Now, if I'm being honest with you, we all work with people who we're like, hey, you guys are killing me here, right? Like, these meetings, they're literally killing me. I'm disengaged. And now that I'm at home, like, I can turn off my camera and check my email and get some work done. You know, we all have worked with people like this. But here's the problem. This isn't helpful. This doesn't help people be we're not changing practice, but looking at people like vampires. Like, should I go to my next department meeting and like start labeling people as vampires? Like, gosh, Sharon Carrick, you're such a vampire. You're sucking the lifeblood out of me. I use Sharon because no one would ever believe that about Sharon, right? But this isn't helpful for us. This isn't evidence-based. This is not data-driven decision-making. There is no research behind this. This is a catchy phrase that somebody uses to sell books, the same way as in this. Employee engagement for dummies. Look, if employee engagement for dummies was real, we'd all have it, right? We'd all feel it. Now, I will say, I was giving a talk to a group of. I'm going to go back here because I want us to live in this for a minute. I was giving a talk to a group of prison guards. Is one of the more interesting presentations I've ever given. So the Kentucky Association of Correctional Professionals asked me to come in and do some work around burnout, exhaustion, workplace stuff. And I showed this slide here, and I said, pizza parties don't drive engagement, right? They don't drive engagement. You bring pizza to the university, I don't care. I don't eat pizza. I probably wouldn't eat it. Somebody from the association came up and they said, once a month, our leaders bring in pizza for us, and we all sit around and we just get to talk and connect. And it's the only time that month that I get to see some of my friends, and I really love it. And so, yeah, for me, pizza parties really drive my engagement. So I stopped saying that, because recognition and community and belonging are contextual. Okay. They are contextual based upon what I've got around me, what my story is, how I identify with the organization. And so does a top 10 list of things drive engagement? No, it doesn't. Do principles drive engagement? They can. And we can derive practices from those principles. So let me be very clear. Practice does not drive principle. Principle always drives practice. So what we need to do is figure out what are the things that actually drive employee engagement. And we've talked about a couple of these: community, belonging, voice, being included, being at the table, feeling like I belong. But there are some others that I want to dive into. Now, somebody mentioned the idea of satisfaction. Before I pull this up, I'm going to show you a very complicated statistical chart. And here's why I'm going to do that. I don't typically do this because it's confusing even to me. One of the things that I had to overcome in my early research, and even in my doctoral dissertation, was people would say engagement and satisfaction are the same thing. They're the same thing. We don't need another measure of a job attitude because we know what job we've got job satisfaction. We've got job satisfaction and this thing called organizational commitment, and then this other thing called job involvement, employee engagement. And this we went back and forth publishing together or kind of going at each other. Job engagement adds 0 to the conversation, and so we tested that. Here's what it looks like. So imagine imagine that you're on a beach and you think the wind is blowing. Okay, can you catch the wind? Like, can you reach out and catch the wind? Can you? No. If I want it to be windy outside, can I buy some wind from Amazon? Will the Amazon driver deliver? Is that Prime? Can I get some wind on Amazon? No, can't do that. Can't go to Walmart, get some wind. No, we can't touch it. Like, we can't touch this book, right? Instead, we have to have indicators of that. So how do we know the wind is blowing? Well, maybe the trees are bending a little bit, or we can see the leaves rustling, or maybe if you're at the beach, there's waves that are crashing, and the harder the wind is blowing, the higher the waves are, and it gives us indicators that there's this phenomena that we call wind. Well, it's the same thing for these 4 things: job satisfaction, job involvement, organizational commitment, and employee engagement. You physically cannot see them. We cannot go to Amazon and buy more of them. And so you have to identify indicators. So just follow me for a second. You have to identify the theoretical space and then empirically test the theoretical assumptions. Okay. So it's like doing theoretical physics. Like, I think gravity exists. I think so. I'm going to test it by jumping off this stair, right? And if I hit the floor, then gravity may exist. So we did this. This is what it looks like when you test theoretical constructs in physically empirical ways in the social sciences. So what you see here is what we call overlapping, unique, and common joint variance. That's not important to remember. This is just a really fancy statistical overlay model of what those job attitudes kind of look like. Okay. Now, if those things were the same, we would expect they should all overlap. If we were to draw big circles, they should all be the same exact thing. Okay. There should be nothing outside. It shouldn't look like a Venn diagram, or there shouldn't be any space that's unaccounted for. And that's just not true. This is what the physical interpretation of the theoretical job attitude space looks like. Now, that's a mouthful. Say that at your next cocktail party, and you're going to have those people in the palm of your hands, right? So you can see that these things are actually quite different. That is there unique space to them all? Yeah, right here in the middle. Where you see OCJIJS. Yeah, this is space that's unique, or that's common to all of these, but it's not all the same. And here's what this told us: that job satisfaction looks and feels different than organizational commitment, and organizational commitment looks and feels different than job involvement, and job involvement looks and feels different from this new thing that we call employee engagement, which we define as this, right? So quickly with the satisfaction, because I've got about 52 more slides, of course, as I'm a faculty member. Job satisfaction is a state of satiation. So go with me for a minute. When I'm satisfied, status quo, don't change anything. I'm totally good. I like to draw the analogy of like Thanksgiving, or like a big meal. My families will often get together on a Sunday and we eat a big meal. And after I eat that big meal, I'm satisfied. I don't want any more. I'm good. I would really just like to sit here on this couch and take a nap, right? Status quo, don't change anything. Job satisfaction translates the same way. Job satisfaction is a state of satiation. It's status quo. Don't change my benefits. You can probably increase my pay, but don't, it shouldn't go down anywhere, right? Don't change that. That's bad. Don't change my benefits. Don't change my role responsibilities unless I ask for it. Don't change how I'm going to be evaluated. I'm satisfied. Engagement is different in that engagement is a forward-moving construct of motivation. It's a state that pulls us forward, not sits us down. So you might think of satisfied employees as like, are they happy? Maybe, but they might look like this. I'm good. No, don't change anything, right? And engaged employees are like running. Where's the next project? What can I do? How can I help? Right? They're engaged. They're engaged emotionally, they're engaged cognitively, and then they're engaged behaviorally. All right. How do I know all this stuff? All right, let me tell you. Hold on. I got to get back here. All right. I'm going to walk you through very quickly 3 case studies. Because I think we just need to have some evidence about this, right? I'm going to commit to walking through these in 7 minutes. 7 minutes, ladies and gentlemen, and then we can open it up for questions. And I really love to hear your reflection. Like, does this make sense? Is this all kind of like, who cares? But before we do that, let me present the evidence case to you. Case study number 1. How do you measure engagement? How do you get at it? All right, this was hard. This was very difficult because, as I mentioned, the wind is blowing. You can't catch it. People are engaged. You can't buy it. How do you measure something you can't see? So here's what we did. We engaged in 4 unique studies over a 3-year period. So it took a really long time to do this. And we wanted to look at, could we capture in question form what it felt like to be engaged? We did all the things that good researchers did. We reviewed all the articles and books and read all that stuff. We initially developed a set of items, and then we tested it across 4 studies. The sample sizes ranged from 258 people to 1,067 people. And we looked at outcomes like effort, creativity, turnover, innovation, and learning, all within the scope of our degree, what we teach in OLL and what we teach in HROT, right? And here's what we found. Here are the 12 questions that we ended up with. So when people say, how do you measure employee engagement? Boom, the employee engagement scale. That's how you measure employee engagement. So look at the questions. When I'm at work, I'm really focused when I'm working. I concentrate on my job when I'm at work. I give my job responsibility a lot of attention. At work, I'm really focused on my job. Now, notice there's a difference between working and being in my job. So we try to capture those. We're looking for indicators to triangulate that, right? Then we get down here to what we call emotional engagement. I care about the future of the company. I feel a strong sense of belonging. I believe in the mission. Then we get to what we call behavioral engagement. I really push myself. I put in extra effort. I go above and beyond. I really work hard to help the University of Louisville be successful. So from that, here's what we found. 93% of people who answer that questionnaire positively, there's 12 easy questions. 93% of those people say that they go above and beyond. They give discretionary effort. 91% of those people say that they're very unlikely to leave the organization. That's pretty good. Why would they leave though? So think about the answers to those questions. I belong here. I'm proud that I work here. I love going above and beyond. I feel like I can do my job. I'm concentrated. I can focus on my work. Why would you leave a place like that, right? My favorite is this idea of creativity, because creativity happens in very vulnerable spaces. When we ask people to be more innovative or we ask them to be more creative, what we're asking them to do is raise their hand in a meeting and answer a question. And they may not want to do that. Have you ever been in a meeting before and known the answer to a question that somebody asked and not raised your hand? That's creativity. That's innovation. I've done that, right? I've sat on my hand. No, I'm not going to answer that question. People who are engaged at work, they raise their hand. Hey, I got 2 hands. See my hands? I got both my hands up. If I could put my feet up in the air, I'd put my feet up in the air. What we found was that the employee engagement scale is a really robust measure of what it means to be engaged, the psychological state of engagement. We've had this scale translated in several countries across the world: Ghana, South Korea, Peru, China, India, Panama, and we've had it used in the UK. It's been globally normed. This was cool. This is a screenshot that I got of the Korean version of the employee engagement scale. Here's what's neat about this. Like, I've been thinking about this for 7 years, and to see it translated in a different language and then used in Korean organizations was really a huge thrill for me. So this is what if you wanted to use the Korean version, or we recently translated it this morning into a Spanish version. So we have a cross-national study that we're doing in Chile, Mexico, Peru, Colombia, and Panama to see what does engagement look like in institutions of higher education. Okay. Case study number 2. I'm already behind time. Case study number 2. What matters for practice? Who cares? What is it? What really matters here? And to do that, we've done a lot of work in the healthcare space. And we looked at a population of employees in the healthcare space called a child life specialist. Child life specialist has a particularly difficult job. They work with kids, typically always pediatric patients, who are going to get some bad news, or they're going to have a long-term stay in the hospital, or they're going to have a difficult procedure. And a child life specialist helps children and their families navigate those hospital environments. They normalize and humanize an environment that's typically meant to be very, very sterile, distant, and cold. And so as a result of that, exhaustion and burnout really high. So we wanted to examine what it looked like for them. We looked at engagement, professional climate, career well-being. What we found was that better experiences of culture. Do I belong here? Do I fit? Does my work matter? Does somebody care that I show up every day? And opportunities for career growth. Does somebody talk to me about my career here? Am I able to get training and development to help take my career to the next level? Is there a career path plan for me here? Can I actually have a career here? Increase levels of engagement. So I missed that. Culture and learning were 2 huge drivers of employee engagement. And what we ended up finding was that things like they had higher levels of well-being and they were burned out less. Right now, burnout in healthcare is the problem. It is the issue in healthcare. It's also, you know who else it is an issue with? People who work at your grocery store or people who work at Amazon. Because during COVID, while I got to stay at home and work from my home office, the people who work at Kroger up the street pulled double shifts, right? Or that my Amazon driver or my next door neighbor who's a UPS pilot who's flying COVID vaccines all over the United States, his routes have doubled over the last couple of weeks. And so burnout and exhaustion become very real. They're going to be a very real problem as we reintegrate back into work. So there's an absolute connection to things like OLL and things that you're learning in class, and then HRD. All right, last case study. What factors of HRD impact engagement? I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. We looked at this is a global study where 50% of the population for the study came from the United States and 50% of the population came from Europe and Asia. No research had really explored the connection between what we're going to call human resource development, which is things like training development, career development, and caring about the OD aspects of the HR role. Nobody had really connected those things back to this idea of engagement. So we ran that model. This is what that model looks like. This is a mediation model. We're just seeing, does this thing called employee engagement mediate the relationship between learning? Just worry about this learning and then turnover and tension. Okay. So when they feel like they can learn, or they feel like there's career growth or that they fit here in this company, are they more likely to be engaged? And as a result of that, are they less likely to leave the company? And I bet you know the answer to the question. The answer to that question is, that is what happens. So the engagement framework was actually a really good measure for understanding the connection between things like OLL and HROD, and HRD, and performance and turnover. So it was interesting. Engagement was actually a partial causal agent. So it wasn't just related. It was predictive. It was something that was future oriented. All right. What else here? Here's where this is my last slide. I've got others, but they don't, they're all background noise right now. So people often ask me, Shuck, tell me, what's the secret? What's the secret to employee engagement? Can you just tell me what the secret is? Guys, I have run hundreds of research studies. I've talked to tens of thousands of participants. And there are 3 things that drive engagement. There are just 3. The first is when somebody believes that there is meaning and value in their work. When we see meaning and value in our work, and we feel like we're valued contributors, that our voice matters, that we can contribute, that we belong here, we are more likely to be engaged. The second is it's safe. Is it safe to work here? Can I trust this environment? Do I trust this environment to take into account my best interest as much as they're asking me to take into account their best interest? Is there a reciprocal transformational relationship there? Is it meaningful and is it safe? Those are the first two. And then the third is, do I have the resources to do my job? Do I have the resources to not only complete my work, but also compete at my work? And what I mean by that is, can I be good at this? I don't want to people, for the vast majority of the folks that we've talked to over the last 2 decades, very few people have said, I really want to do a bad job. I really want to suck at my work. I don't want to be good. I would be fine just being mediocre for the rest of my life. I don't know anybody that doesn't wake up in the morning and desire a sense of purpose, a sense of value, a sense of mission, and they go out and they get it. Some people don't get that from their work, and so they put it in another place. They engage with their community. They engage with their church. They engage with their neighborhood. They engage with their family. They go do that and they put that effort and energy into something else. But when people wake up in the morning, the vast majority of us are looking for opportunities to make a contribution, to have value in our work, to work in a place where we feel like is trustworthy and where we have the resources to do our job to the best of our ability. This connects directly back to original work by a guy named William Kahn, who works at Boston University, who said this idea called engagement, driven by 3 things: meaning, safety, and resources. So guys, with that, it's 6:23. Here again, in case you need more info, want to connect, see some YouTube videos, you can look me up on the socials at Dr. B. Shuck, or catch me. I have a website where I put resources up from time to time. Let me pause there because I talked a lot for like 40 minutes. That's a long time. What questions do you have? What came up? What don't you agree with? What are you like, nah, I don't think so. I don't buy that.
What are some of the challenges that you have when you're working with companies who maybe want a fast answer for engagement, or they're looking for a pizza party kind of answer, and instead you tell them, well, actually it goes all the way back to resources. This is going to cost you resources from other areas. You kind of need to like redo everything. How do you say that in a way that they take it well?
It's a good question. So, thank you for asking that question. One of the things that I will typically talk about when I work with organizations is something called the cumulative principle, and I lay it out as a foundational principle for how we're going to do our work. And the cumulative principle says things like, the majority of our life is determined by the things that are easy to do and easy not to do. So if somebody, for example, says, I want to be more mindful. I just want to be a more mindful human. I go, oh, look, that's easy. You just get up 10 minutes earlier in the morning and you journal for 10 minutes, or get up 10 minutes earlier in the morning and meditate, or do yoga, or make a cup of tea before everybody gets up. And you go, oh, that's easy, right? It's easy to do. But you know what else is, what's easier? My phone has a snooze button on it. Your phone might have a snooze button. And at 5:15 in the morning, a snooze button is easy to hit, right? So it's easy to do. It's easy not to do. It's easy to get up. It's also easy not to get up. And it feels sudden, but it's gradual. So it's not that I got up today, but it's that I built a habit of those things. So we talk very specifically about this thing called the cumulative principle. And what I tell them, and I wish I had the model, we developed a model of compassionate leadership. And in that model are 6 leader behaviors that drive engagement. And we ground them in the framework of compassion. And there are things, some of the behaviors are dignity, authenticity, presence, accountability, empathy, and there's another one that's escaping my mind. And I pose this question: how expensive is it to treat somebody with dignity? No, it's totally free, but you got to do it. And that doesn't mean dignity for just Jose. It means dignity for everybody on the call today, right? It means helping people live into that space. And we can help people be accountable, but we can also give them dignity, and we can have empathy and be present with them in the moment. There are some things that an organization can do that will drive engagement that doesn't cost a lot of money. There are some things, as you mentioned, that will. One of those things, one of the questions I get a lot is about pay. We'll just pay people more money. And here's what I'll tell you. Pay does not drive engagement. Here's my thing with pay. You have to pay people enough money to take money off the table as an issue, or it is the only issue you will have. If your employees do not earn a decent living wage and they cannot pay their bills, and every month they are scared and worried and there's fear, it is the only thing they care about. And so they'll work for that. It's dysfunctional. And so you have to pay people enough money to take money off the table as the issue, or it is an issue. Here's another thing that drives me crazy, and I don't understand it. And this happens at the University of Louisville, and I just get really upset about it sometimes. I do not know why there is a gender gap in pay. I can't wrap my head around this. I can't wrap my head around. There's been 2 instances recently where I've had female faculty members who are in the same positions as men are paid less than their male counterparts. How does that happen? And so now you have a distributive justice issue. Now pay is the issue, man. You have to take care of that.
Part of that reason is that women don't negotiate as often as men do. That's only a tiny part of it.
I agree.
I was involved with some of that.
I agree with you.
I would say that's a reactive reason, though. That's not the core of the reason.
We should never put people in those positions.
That's what I mean by that. Yeah.
Absolutely. There is not a time. I have a 10-year-old little girl. There's not a time when she should be taken advantage of because she doesn't do X, Y, Z. There should be that's equality, right? Like that's what equity looks like. So that's a different soapbox, blah, blah, blah. But here's my thing. Post pay, here's what our research says, that there's a 2-to-1 benefit for feeling connected as a part of a community than it is to feel isolated. And so what I tell people is, what can we do here to build community? What can we do to drive a sense of belonging with your teams and your organization? And it's things like send swag, send logoed stuff. Let them wear something. Make sure that there's a really good orientation, that somebody's thought about their first day of work, so that then when they come into work, they're not like, hey, Eric, it's your first day today. Oh, okay. And they're scrambling really quickly. These are little things. I think sometimes organizations try to get really fancy and they miss the blocking and tackling. And we got to get the blocking and tackling stuff done first, and then we can get to the fancy stuff. That's a long-winded way to answer your great question. So
awesome. Thank you, though. Thank you.
You're welcome. Other questions? Because we are knocking on the door 6:30 here. Oh, yeah. I think that's exactly right. So engagement is a proactive behavior instead of a passive behavior. So that's how we might distinguish it between satisfaction and engagement. Is satisfaction tends to be passive. I'm good. No, I'm cool. Don't change anything. I'm fine. Don't move anything around. When engagement tends to be active. Now, you can't be engaged full on all the time. The example that I give on this is my wife teaches kindergarten. One of the things that I really loved to do back before COVID was take her some Starbucks. So I would stop and get Starbucks. I would go into her classroom, and my job was to rile those kids up. We would high five, and we're jumping around and making noises and blah, 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 blah. And then once I got them all riled up, I would just be like, okay, see you later. And I would leave and I would tap out. And then she's, stuck with this mess. If a workforce is engaged full on all the time, it's a little bit chaotic. And so there's this natural ebb and flow of moments of energy and then rest, and then energy and then rest, and then energy and then rest. And so if engagement dips a little bit, I don't worry about that. Where we begin to worry is we see like a steady downward trend. But it's okay to self-care. It's okay to rest. It's okay to take a break. It's okay to take a nap in the middle of the day if you get really tired. It's okay to do some of those things. Engagement has a real natural ebb and flow to it. All right, I'm going to toss it back to Jose, but here's what I'll say. guys, if you want to email me, if you have any other questions, you want to follow up, you want to have a deeper conversation about something, let me know. Let's schedule some time and connect. And if I can give you some resources, everything I talked to you today is pretty evidence based, and I just want you to be armed with information. When you go into an organization or you're a part of an organization, you need to care about the evidence-based practice of this, because bad data will get you bad outcomes. And so we want to make sure that the data you're using and that you're using to make decisions is the kind of data that's going to be helpful for you, not the kind of data that's going to put you in a different ballpark. So guys, thank you. Jose, let me toss it back over to you.
Dr. Shuck, thank you for your time. Great information. I have lots of notes taken down. Fight or survive, emotional, economic, great stuff. One thing I would like to add is just when you mentioned hearts and minds, I think Simon Sinek wrote that it should be hearts, minds, and bodies. So you have your heart, you want to resonate some kind of emotion with people. Your mind, right? Give them raw stats, numbers, figures, something that you can't deny. Then body is by actually doing something, being that leader, leading from the front. So just want